rain could have a positive impact on South Africa's new agricultural season. Higher rainfalls are forecast until February of 2023, covering the cultivation to pollination stages. Now, the SA Weather Service has also highlighted that the El Nino Southern Oscillation is in a La Nina state, and forecasts indicate that it will likely remain in the state during the remainder of the 2022 year as well as early 2023. They are convincing signals pointing to another favourable agricultural season for South Africa in the 2022-23 season. For more on this, we're joined by agricultural economist Wandile Shlobo. Very good afternoon to you. Thank you for your time. The SA Weather Service has highlighted that we're in a La Nina state, which usually has the strongest impact on rainfall during the midsummer months. The forecast higher rains are set to be good in terms of improved soil moisture from now up until February of next year. But at the same time, farmers have been told to remain vigilant as agricultural activity could be negatively affected. What's at stake?
100%, Mpo. The start of the rains has been a good thing because it means now the season could start in a usual time, which is for the eastern side of South Africa. That's around about the 15th of October every year. And then if you look in the western side of South Africa, that's around about the 15th of November. So we are within that optimal planting period. But what we are watching now is, of course, the intensity of this rain across the country. We've already seen in the northern parts of the country that some of the farmers are receiving more than what they bargained for. But I think over the next couple of weeks, if the rain could come at a much more moderate pace, then the guys will be able to get on the field and pretty much plant. And when you speak with them, they are generally optimistic about the upcoming season. So we'll be watching, of course, this rain and see how things progress.
Will this planting activity meet expectations as far as things are looking right now?
With the information we have at this point, it looks like we will meet the expectations, and the expectations are positive. I mean, we're looking at planting around about 4.3 million hectares for the summer crop. That's slightly up from what we planted last year. And it's not only the rainfall that is proving this optimism, because even if you look at the tractor sales and all of the other data, either of seed sales, all of that is pointing positively to an environment where farmers are really positive about the upcoming season. But the one thing, though, that we're all watching, because last year, for example, for the 2021-22 season, the rain started at a good pace, but somewhere between December and the start of January, the rain was just too much, and it did cause a bit of damage in the western side of South Africa. So we hope that this time around, we don't get to a situation like that where folks have to replant some of their fields because of heavy rains. Yeah,
absolutely. What are some of the other challenges that farmers face around, especially the high input costs, looking on the back of supply constraints and disruptions in production lines as a result of the Russia-Ukraine war?
It's precisely that, Mpo, in a sense that if now the rains were to be too much and cause a bit of damage in some of the areas that they have been planted, it would then mean that there must be a replanting. And if you look at the input costs at this point, take, for example, fertilizer prices. They are up plus 30% compared to where we were last year at this time. And in fact, last year, fertilizer prices were already plus 60% up. So you've been on this trajectory of higher input costs. And it's the same story if you look at the agrochemicals. And if you are a grain farmer, as an example, if you look at your input costs, about 30% of that is fertilizer, about 13% of that is fuel, and all of these are increasing. So the hope is that we get good moisture, and thereafter there is a bit of a break so that folks can plant, because in that environment they wouldn't have to replant some of their patches with these higher input costs. So that's the major challenge, I would say, the farmers are looking at. It's that of the higher input cost.
With a little bit of uncertainty, how does this now trickle down to the end user, the consumer? What does it mean for the consumer in terms of pricing?
Yeah, Mpo, I think the first point, just before I quickly get into that, to clarify, is that while we talk about these rains and we're highlighting all of these risks, with all the information we have at this point, the evidence points to a relatively better agricultural season. And the only thing that I could add on what we have discussed is that folks that are in the livestock space, they have to be watchful of the diseases that can actually affect the livestock with these heavy rainfall. Now, for the consumer, the pricing issue, I mean, we're looking at an environment where consumer food prices will somewhat soften as we go into 2023, which means that for 2023, prices will increase at a much softer pace than what we are seeing this year. For the first 9 months of this year, if you average that, South Africa's food price inflation is somewhere around about 8%, and you compare that with the past few years, we were at far less than that. So we've been in this environment of tougher conditions, but going forward, it looks like the environment is going to be improving. And if the agricultural season is good, it also then means that we will have supplies. But of course, the price is not only an outcome of what happens domestically, it's also influenced by the global issues, either in Ukraine, in Asia, or somewhere in South America. All of these tends to have an impact on the prices. But so far, the information is pointing to a better environment in 2023.
Yes, you say that. You say South Africa could have another favourable agricultural season going into 2023. But what will it take for farmers to achieve high production levels and keep some level of consistency?
I think for farmers to achieve a higher level of production and some level of consistency, I mean, we're only just going to be watching now what the rainfall conditions are, because there's three major indicators that you have to have on top of mind by just looking at how the season will look like. The first one is the rainfall, which we've been discussing. It has its risks, but it's pointing to a positive so far. The second one is to say, how are the farmers spending on movable assets, such as the machinery, tractors, combine harvesters, and all of those things. The numbers we have now are quite robust for the first 10 months of this year. So the guys have been buying machinery, which means that they have a bit of confidence about the upcoming season. The third one is the commodity prices, which also provide an incentive for folks to get into the fields. And if you look at those, maize prices, soybean prices, they are plus 20% up compared to last year, which means then if you are a grower, you have a bit of an incentive to get on the fields and work, because you can still make a bit of some good profits onto that. But of course, that is notwithstanding the fact that the input costs are higher, which means then to remain at a more sustainable level, you need to get higher yields. And we do think that at this point, South African farmers could be able to do that. And their own indications with their intentions to plant data is pointing to that optimism.
Very well. Thank you so much for your time, agricultural economist Wandile Shlobo, giving us a sense of the impact of the rains that we're experiencing, what it all means for the agricultural sector.